Motherhood in Motion,
the podcast for mothers with ambition.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Motherhood in Motion, the podcast for mothers with ambition, where Anushka Kalyanpur-Deluca and Constanze Munz, your co-hosts for the podcast. Really excited to have you here today. Motherhood is rarely linear. Careers shift, families relocate, support systems change, and ambitions evolve. This podcast explores what happens in those moments of movement between roles, identities, seasons, and geographies, when mothers are actively navigating what it means to build lives that work for both their families and their ambitions on their own terms. We believe ambition does not disappear after motherhood. It recalibrates, it clarifies, and when the conditions are right, it builds into something more purposeful than before. Season 2 is called The Problem She Could Not Unsee. Every founder in this season encountered something in her own motherhood journey that she simply could not look away from. A gap in the system, a need that was not being met, a problem that was too real and too close to ignore. And instead of waiting for something else or someone else to solve it, she built it herself. Not just for herself, but for every mother who comes after. These are the stories of women who turned personal friction into purpose. And they are some of the most inspiring conversations we've had. We're so excited to share this season with you. Let's do this. Our first guest today is the wonderful Alexa Starks.
For me, it's so exciting to have Alexa on the call because I saw you, I think, either on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And I kind of followed your path since, which has been now, I don't know, no more than 6 months it must have been. And I saw the studies you're doing and the numbers you're sharing and the conversations you're having. And I just felt like she's so in our corner, like she's doing similar things than we do and talking the same language and thinking about the same things. And I was like, we need to have her on the podcast. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. But maybe just to share, because we have been following what you're doing, what are you actually doing? And how did your life look like the last year? Because I know a lot of things have changed as well.
Yeah, great question. So we pivoted last year and did a big rebrand. And so now Mother to Media does research, and it does a magazine, so storytelling, documenting working motherhood, and we do campaign and like advocacy events. And so in January, we put out the Future of Working Motherhood report, which looked at how women, working moms, are supported or unsupported, for that matter, in the return to work experience, maternity leave, and at work. And then from there, on June 1st, we published our Maternal Strengths Report, which has been phenomenal, but it quantified how motherhood impacts your leadership skills. And of all 12 leadership skills we measured, women reported that motherhood increased every single one, that they felt they were much, much better at all of these leadership skills. And so that's been tremendous. And then in September, we're doing the National Working Motherhood Week across the US. We had our June issue of Mother magazine come out 2 weeks ago. That's moved to monthly. So it's been a lot, but it's just been rapid growth and a broader systemic redesign of data behind working motherhood. So we have real numbers, and changing the perception of how working mothers are seen and valued by society by showing these real examples of ambitious, capable working moms building companies, leading teams, and being present for their kids and figuring out that balance. And sometimes it's messy and sometimes it's great, but these real examples that we can just have the data and we can have the real examples to show, because there's still so much stigma and bias around, working moms are less capable or less ambitious, and you and I, we all know that's simply not true.
Absolutely. And you are definitely in the right place, because that's what Constanze and I here really aim to do on Motherhood in Motion. As we mentioned on our last call, we have done 2 waves of research exactly on this topic on motherhood and ambition in the UAE. The second one really looked at what happens when the infrastructure that holds mothers up actually collapses, what happens to their ambition. A lot of alignment, similarities with the research you're seeing. So we're really, really excited to have you on today.
Yeah, I just love that our work aligns well globally. It's amazing to see that.
Absolutely. So maybe we should dive right in then. So thank you, Alexa. Alexa, as she mentioned, is the founder of Executive Moms, editor-in-chief of Mothered Magazine, and the CEO of Mothered Media. We are so excited to have you here today. I know the reports you mentioned on Future of Working Motherhood 2026, Maternal Strengths Report. We're so excited to learn more about it. I know you've been featured in NPR and Forbes and Business Insider. And yeah, just really happy to learn about this journey you've been through. So maybe the first question that we always like to start with, if you could share a little bit about what season of motherhood you are currently in, both personally, professionally.
Whew, that's a great question. I'm in like the crazy ambitious season of motherhood. A lot of women are in like more of a balance of like ambition and trying to be more present for moms. I'm in the I have so much ambition and I have so much confidence from being a mom that I'm like, nothing is harder than surviving reflux with a baby. Nothing is harder than surviving sleep deprivation. I can literally do anything. And so I'm just like, do I want to go bigger? Like, okay, let's do bigger. Like, figure out how to get to that. Cause I'm like, I can figure out how to do it. I can figure out how to do anything. So that's the season I'm in. I have really big plans and it's just like, all right, how do we put it into motion? How do we figure it out? What's next? So I feel like my motto for 2026 was do big shit. And my motto for 2027 is going to be like, do bigger shit.
Love that. Love that.
So incredible, because I mean, you have 2 kids, you mentioned, both still small kids, so 3.5 and 2.
Yes.
But you also moved countries. I think it was last year. When was it? So you're bits of everything, right?
Yeah, we moved last year from Dallas to the Netherlands, and it's been amazing. I mean, it's been a big transition, but for me, I've never been like tied down to one place. When I was in my 20s, I moved from LA to Dallas by myself. I moved around a lot as a kid. So moving has always been something easy for me. And then we did it when our kids were so little that the transition period was fairly quick because toddlers are very adaptable. And so, yeah, it's been really great. I mean, life is amazing in the Netherlands. And especially once you get outside of the US, you realize how much better things are, or at least how great many other countries are, not just the US, because in the US really brainwashes you into like, we're the greatest and the only free country and all that shit. So, yeah, the kids have adapted. And like I said, I feel like anything is easier than raising toddlers.
Yeah, and actually geographic motion is a big part of, a reason we decided to go with this name, Motherhood in Motion. And we always talk about, when we shift between seasons, between locations, it's also about adapting those systems that we set up for ourselves and our families, and also to enable our ambition. So while we're on the topic, just curious, you said that transition was fairly quick and easy. Was there something about the system that you pivoted that allowed that? Curious, because I'm about to spend a lot more time in the US, and this is very top of mind for me.
Yeah, I feel like setting the bar really low has made it significantly less stressful, right? So some days we had pancakes for dinner, but they loved it and they were fed and they went to bed full, right? Some days all they ate was berries and cheese, and I was like, "Are you guys hungry?" And they're like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay." So it's setting the bar low so that I'm not trying, society has this expectation of moms being these like perfect mothers 100% of the time, right? 100% great at your job, 100% perfect mother. And that's not realistic. And it's going to ebb and flow, right? Some days my kids eat super healthy meals and sleep great. Some days, recently, my son's been waking us up at 5:30. So it's all about the balance, and having lower expectations takes a lot of stress off of me so that I'm not so concerned about trying to be like some society perfection that's not me. So especially in that transition time, when you're traveling a lot, you kind of have to let things fly, and just be adaptable. And if you're trying to hold on to like that perfection when you're in the middle of a huge transition of moving, it's gonna be way more stressful on you because you're just fighting against yourself at that point.
You're reminding me of the very first episode on embracing imperfection with Izzy. But yeah, thank you for that. Over to you, Constanze.
Yeah, I've been in a similar situation the last 3 weeks. I've been solo parenting, no nanny. And it's just like you say, they're fed, they're happy. That's all that matters in the end. And you just go with the flow. But going a bit back to what you are doing and how you went to what you're doing. So you have been in corporate You have done it. And then you have pivoted into something that is really now on the topic of motherhood and ambition. Was there like a certain moment that made you do this? Was there a certain incident or anything that you thought like, yeah, I have to do this change and make it happen?
Oh yeah. I mean, I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had my whole career mapped out. I even went and got a master's degree in organizational leadership during COVID because I was like, that's going to help me get promoted even more and climb my way up the ladder. And then I had my first baby, and my manager was very much just like, not going to talk about it. You're good. You're back at 100% on day one. Don't need to talk about anything, kind of a thing. And then I had a second manager for my second baby, and she was a woman, but she didn't have kids. And she was very much like, I see you're struggling, but I'm not really going to say anything. And it became just a very toxic work environment. The promotion that I was working towards, I got sidelined for. And so I kind of saw it coming. And so that I was going to get pushed out, and because we just didn't get along. And I was, every time I tried to ask for more, she'd be like, I don't really think you need to. Right. And so she was just a very bad boss. It was a very toxic situation. And so I started building my company on the side before we left. And then yeah, they let me go, and I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to go full time in my company, and I did. So yeah, and it helped that my husband still had his job full time as well, so that kind of helped pad the like runway before my business started making like consistent money to support us. So yeah.
Then the question is, how are you making that money? Because I think we're all in this bits of, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we see that it's challenging, right? I mean, you have kids, you have a career. Because you're working from home all of the time, it's also very easy to default into, oh, I have to do the kids, or someone's sick, or I have to do the housework. So it takes a very structured routine, a very structured day, and a very ambitious mindset in order to get there. Maybe take us through on how you set this all up and where you are now at this stage of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so right now my kids are in daycare 4 days a week, because in the Netherlands it's common to only go like 2 or 3 days a week. So the kids are home Wednesdays. So I don't really work during the day Wednesdays, or at least I try not to. It's very hard. And so the other days I work a lot. We drop them off. I'll go to the gym. And then I'll work all day. We'll pick them up from daycare. And then after we put them to sleep, I'll work again from like 8 to 10-ish, 8 to 10:30. And I do that most of the nights. But I'm very, like, I don't find it draining because I'm very driven and I love what I do. But it's, yeah, so the way I make money is we have sponsorships for our events. So the National Working Motherhood Week that's coming up in September, we'll have sponsors for. The Future Working Motherhood report that we did in January, we had sponsors for as well. The Maternal Strengths Report, we didn't, just because I did not have any time to do any of that. But and then the magazine makes money each month. So those are paid features because there are real people putting the magazine together. It's an actual print magazine and digital magazine as well that ships globally. And there's real hands designing every page and editing. And then we have ads in that as well.
I mean, I think that's, exactly at the crux of this. It's how, all the founders we speak to are creating solutions that to challenges that they themselves have faced and other women around them are facing. And, creating that runway for yourself financially is such a key part of that. So we really strive to, have this be a real and transparent space. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think it's interesting because most people, the most common thing I hear is, try to get into consulting, or coaching. And so you've got like more consistent client. And I started my business that way with maternity leave coaching and corporate workshops, but we ended up shifting because I felt like I was never really solving the problem. We actually just signed a workshop based on the Maternal Strengths Report. A company wanted to bring a strengths building workshop to their women's employee group, but that was so custom and was like, that's not my main source of business. It was just like, yeah, we could do this. Absolutely. We've done workshops. We can do workshops. But I wanted to do something that just felt right for the main goal of the systemic redesign. And so it looks very different than what someone else would do with like consulting or coaching, as far as like entrepreneurship goes. So it was very kind of different, I feel like, but I like it. It fits. And we're going to be doing our expansion. So I guess it's only halfway through the year. So for the rest of this year and next year, we're doing more conferences, summit events. So that'll bring in more revenue as well. We were going to start doing some more and sponsorships for all of that, and the magazine move to monthly so that we can, because there was a lot of demand. And so we were originally starting it quarterly, and then we couldn't have a 400-page magazine. So we're like, okay, we'll move it to monthly. So it's been, I think the hardest thing about entrepreneurship is how long it takes to make money, and then how long it takes to make consistent money, and then how long it takes to make consistent money that covers everything and actually makes you a profit.
Right.
And social media makes it look like it should take 3 months. And in reality, it could be a year and a half, 2 years before it's enough to cover all your bills and have profit left over. So it is hard. And having savings helps tremendously if you're pivoting from corporate to entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. And I think, going back to the problem that you saw, and you said this started when you were coaching moms returning from work. What was the, main issue that nobody was naming out loud? What is this, 40% of the women leaving the workforce? What are they actually facing that you are seeking to solve?
Yeah, it was the lack of support. That in the US, there's no maternity leave standard. And so you may get 6 weeks. If you're company off for 6 weeks, you may get 8 weeks. You're lucky if you get 12 weeks off. But there's no support in the transition back to work. So if you're lucky and get 3 months of maternity leave, you're still newly postpartum. 3 months is freshly postpartum. Your baby's most likely not sleeping through the night yet. You've probably just finally gotten into a great routine of breastfeeding. And so now to go back to work is very difficult and complicated. And now maybe you have to figure out how to pump between meetings and at work in a public place. Your hormones are probably still like all over the place. And there's no support, and you're not in a place where you know how to ask your manager or even what to ask or how to ask for support and what to say. The idea of ramping back up never even occurred to me when I was going through maternity leave, like that's even an option. No one told me about it. No one talked to me about it. And so many of the moms I coached were like, oh, wait, I can have like a transition plan. I can have like a re-onboarding plan. It's like, yes. You just have to communicate and talk to your boss about it and plan it beforehand so that you're not expected to be at 100% on day one, which is not realistic. But that's the unspoken expectation and assumption that happens. So much of it was about how to talk to your manager, what to say, and just like giving them the tools. Like, here's literally a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Take this PDF to your manager and work through it step by step by step. So I wish I had that, honestly. It was very therapeutic almost to help other moms have a better experience.
That's awesome. And was that in the form of one-on-one coaching or workshops or, okay.
It was one-on-one coaching. And then I did some corporate workshops where it was more manager focused on how managers can figure out what to say. Because a lot of it too was the feedback that we got from managers was they don't know what to say. So they didn't say anything. Right. And that just signals that my discomfort is more important than supporting you through this extraordinarily challenging transition period for you. And so a lot of it was giving them language, what to say, what not to say, how to help, what doesn't help. And that gave them more comfort and confidence in being able to support their employees. And a lot of it is just approach with compassion, right? If you genuinely care about your people, it's better to say something and offer help than be scared of saying the wrong thing.
It's basically what you said about your own coming back, right? That the compassion and the empathy was missing. And I think your journey is a bit similar to the journey that we had in terms of why did we want to do the report? We don't want to do a report just to have numbers. We want the numbers to kind of show people that maybe have less empathy, less compassion, that work with, to show this is out there and this is how it's happening and this is what's needed. And I think what you said in your report, that all of the skills you were measuring got better over time, that's one really impressive outcome. And by the way, I have this Claude prompt every day on motherhood and motion topics, and your numbers come up all the time. It's like at least twice a week. Have it coming up. Yeah, so it's really out there, which I think is amazing. But the other thing that I thought was very interesting, that the biggest strengths were not the ones that we always think. We always think it's going to be empathy or like compassion, these kind of things, but I think there was a different takeout. Maybe you can take us through this and also what was surprising for you when you worked through the report.
Yeah, so I also thought that the biggest increases would be in the softer skills, emotional intelligence skills, team building, trust building, empathy, resilience. And they did increase, but the biggest increases were in the operational leadership skills, like time management had the largest increase, 123%. That means women were more than double as good at managing their time than they were before they became mothers. And negotiation, communication, crisis management, prioritization, strategic energy, and resource allocation, those had the biggest increases, like by a lot, like double as good, 83% better at negotiation since becoming a mom. And so these are highly impressive numbers. And these are skills that companies pay millions of dollars for their employees to go and get MBA programs, a degree to improve their leadership skills. And yet these moms are building these skills every day at home, just very unrecognized. And so that was, to me, that was what was the most surprising, because because society really conditions you to think that motherhood makes you softer, right? It makes you more emotionally, build those relationships better. And it does, but it doesn't talk even about the hard leadership skills. And I think that's why so many of us don't recognize it until we're even made aware of it ourselves. And that's been the feedback of like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Yes, I feel like I am so much better at negotiation. Yes, I feel like I am so much better at crisis management. I do that 14 times a day before breakfast, right? And so so that was, so much of it has been the moms seeing the data and being like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. And then the companies being like, oh, that is incredible, right? And so that's just been this tremendous breakthrough, almost, I would say, in seeing the data.
I'm not shocked by this at all either, because when I think of some of the business leaders I've learned a lot from here, for example, Halima, the founder of Kibson's, they're an online sustainable organic grocery sort of setup. And I really like how she always talks about, for quality improvement, you just need to break down the process. You need to go step by step to see, okay, what aspects are working, not working, and, ensure that there are no gaps and, ensure quality at each step of the way. I feel like as moms, like you said, when we're making our plans for the day or the week, how many decisions and how many times are we like, okay, this person's doing that, this person's doing that,
Yep.
What could go wrong? How can we have a backup plan if that goes wrong? I feel like this is a constant thing that we don't think twice about. So I'm really, really not shocked that this is the case, but I love that you have the data for this. I love that you have this. It's so key. So yeah, I think fantastic to get this out in the world. And I also saw the piece about the increased confidence in the workplace as a really huge capability, right? If you could say a little bit more about that, what does that tell us about how workplaces are thinking about mothers and, this increased level of confidence?
So I think there's two things at play. So we have the gender confidence gap, which is real. And that shows that for decades of research that women rate themselves as less capable and have less confidence than men, even though they have identical capabilities, right? But then in our report, we found that working moms rated themselves as more competent at these leadership skills after becoming moms. And so it's like, wait a second, where's the disconnect? And a lot of it is that internal awareness and saying, oh yeah, I do negotiate all day and negotiate successfully, might I add, right? And oh yeah, I do, mitigate crises all day with my toddlers. I could do that in the workplace. And so a lot of this is helping these moms, these women, recognize their own skills and how they've developed them, because society just tells us it's just mom skills. It's just mom life. You're just a mom, right? And you don't actually think, yeah, I am 100% better at communication because I have to communicate with someone who only has like 14 words in their vocabulary. And they have an emotional meltdown, 25 times a day. And so you have to become better. And so society tells us it's just mom. We're just moms. It's just a mom life, right? And then the workplace also doesn't have the language or the data until now to also recognize these motherhood skills as actual skills that also translate to the workplace. And then it's the how. How do you translate them to the workplace? How do you take your negotiating with a toddler skills to the workplace? And it starts with that internal awareness that's going to build your confidence. And so a lot of this report has built this confidence in women to have the data that backs it. So when we see moms say, oh yeah, of course I am better, they can show up with that confidence better in the workplace. And then workplaces have the data to say, interesting, motherhood is a leadership development program, right? So maybe we should treat it as such. So we kind of need to approach it from both sides, so that both sides can recognize it, and then the women can be more comfortable and confident in what they've developed as not just mom skills.
That's the self-awareness piece, right? And I recognize this from myself. Like, I had a conversation last week with a colleague in my company who basically shared with me something I was not aware of, like something around how productive I am. And for me, it's just normal state of mind, right? I'm not realizing this is maybe more productive than others. And then a friend this morning shared with me, or she made me kind of count how many hours do we take to produce this podcast and to prepare. And I sometimes put it a bit down. I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. We do this in the evening. We do this in between. But hearing it back from her and kind of analyzing what we are actually doing, what the impact is, and how much time this actually takes on top of everything else, and how much we are more effective than others is so much more effective than actually just getting feedback in between. And I thought about that while you were talking, because the report brought this out in women, right? The report made them think and made them more self-aware. So how would you now see this as a next step? Because not everyone answered your report. Not everyone maybe sees your report, but if someone thinks about this, how could they bring this to their organization? How could they bring this to their ambitious motherhood? What would be a daily thing maybe to do, or a weekly thing, or something that...
Yeah, I think it starts with on an individual level, some self-reflection, right? Think about, what are you doing every day? What leadership skills does that translate to, right? If you have toddlers, it's probably negotiation, it's probably communication, probably crisis management. If you have older kids and teenagers, it might be more trust building and leading teams. It might be more communication again, but it all adds up. And the more you do it on a daily basis, the better you get at it, right? So I would imagine that women who have kids that are 10, 12, 13, they've been honing these leadership skills for years. I mean, imagine if you had an MBA program. I mean, think about it. People go into a doctor, right? You go through 4 years of bachelor degree, at least in the US, and then you have your master's for 2 years, and then you go and get or medical school for 4 years, and then you have residency or specialization for another 2 years. Now we're at 10 years of studying, right? Think about how skilled they are to become a neurosurgeon, where you have a decade plus of schooling, of studying, of practice, daily practice in residency. That's what motherhood is. By the time you have teens, you're at doctor level of parenting leadership skills that are directly translatable to the workplace. So I would start on an individual level from self-reflection and just think about what you do on a daily basis. What leadership skills might that look like? And then from an organizational level, I mean, we absolutely do more and more workshops. We just had another company reach out wanting to bring a strengths-based workshop to their women's employee group or their company for a mother employee resource group they have. So by all means, we have workshops that we could do. Not as much coaching anymore because I don't have time for one-on-one coaching, but corporate workshops, easy. And those are virtual. So those are easy to do. But on an individual level, start with self-reflection. That's an easy one.
And maybe just digging a little bit deeper. So clearly this overall approach, you're really giving us data and language for shifting from, this deficit-based thinking to strength, right? Which is incredible. But thinking, in practice, you've worked in corporate, you're working with corporates. What have you seen work well within corporates to actually create this structural change, structural recognition beyond the workshops?
So it's going to come down to the culture and policies that also support moms. Because as much as we can give moms the language and tell managers, look how capable these women are, if you're going to penalize these moms when they have to leave to go pick up their kids from school, doesn't matter how capable they are. If you're still going to sideline someone for a promotion because they have to leave at 4 to go pick up their kids from school, not really working still, right? So we also need to see workplace culture and any policies associated with that shift to be supportive as well. And we're in the age of technology. I mean, there's really little to no excuse for saying, or thinking, oh, they're not going to be productive when they're at home, or, work from home or hybrid. Oh, they're not as productive, because there's so many offline tools to track your work and show your progress on projects and tasks and what's been done. And so it's really no excuse. Even for like full 5-day return to office mandates, really should be no excuse, because that's just bad policy. We've proven after COVID that work from home is equally, if not more, sometimes productive. We need to have workplace culture and policy reflect like flexibility with no consequence, right? So if you're going to say work from home 4 days a week, then there can't be any consequence to that. You can't be sidelined for promotions for that. You can't be pushed out because of that, right? So it's the no consequence that has to be attached to that flexibility.
And that is interesting, because we have all been in these systems, right? And we all know how it goes. And that I think all of us are in kind of a generation where it was still very much going towards the longer you're in the office, the more you're productive and the more you're going to be seen as someone who can get promoted. Whereas now we are asking people to rethink that and to have different KPIs. Have you worked maybe with companies on changing their KPIs in order to be more data driven on this point? Because it's difficult. No? It's not easy to change this culture. And just to understand how you can bring that spark into organizations and actually show them how we can change our KPIs and look into this.
Yeah, I always think KPIs should fall into 2 buckets. One is like quantitative about work and outcome based, and making sure it's outcome based. And then the second is like the well-being of your employees, because I personally think you can't just track outcome, you need to also track well-being. And so the first is outcome based, right? And so that's easily done with Asana, Monday.com, ClickUp. You can even use Google Sheets, Smart Sheets. Like, I don't care. There's a billion offline asynchronous tools that can literally track how many sales you did, how many meetings you had, the work on different projects, so that there's no question of are they completing their work, because you can track it. And so you can literally say, I've met every single one of my KPIs, of 15% this or 75% that. And so that's the first part. And then the second part is the well-being. How comfortable are your employees with reaching out to you? What's their mental health like? Are they happy? What are their goals? Having these conversations about, do they need more support? Let's, career map. Are they ambitious? Do they have goals that they want to set? Any stress level, so that's the second part of it. And that's more qualitative, I would say, than it is the quantitative capturing the outcomes. But it's easily done at this point. I mean, it's not rocket science. And so it's really just making sure that companies are measuring outcomes, and any promotions are actually tied to outcomes and not managers' perception, because bias is very real, discrimination is very real. And so any promotions should be done strictly with those like KPI based outcome models.
And, thinking about perception, I know both the research that you have been leading on as well as the ones that we've been doing are all based really on self-reported perception data. Mm-hmm. Have you ever gotten pushback from companies or other stakeholders on, about the methodology there? What would you say to them if?
No, it's just a different type of research that's done. So there's different types of research you could do. Quantitative, qualitative, self-reported. At the end of the day, it's all kind of self-reported data, unless it's like, someone else giving a measure on someone else. But at least for the Maternal Strengths Report, we didn't do a longitudinal study, right? We didn't do a long-term study women before they became a mom, study women after. We're not a university with research grants to, study people like that. So at the end of the day, it's just a different type of survey, and we accounted for that. And as long as we're, transparent about that, which we were, it's not like misleading data. And part of this, I will say, is the confidence, right? If women believe that they are better at negotiation, they're going to show up better at negotiation, more confident and negotiating with an adult who can speak coherent English or whatever their language is, as opposed to a toddler who can't, and yet they can successfully negotiate with a toddler. So I actually think that for the Maternal Strengths Report especially, it was the right survey method to do, because so much of that is your perception of yourself and how you see yourself, and goes back to that self-awareness, reflection on your own capabilities, because that self-confidence is everything. And if you believe you're better, you're going to show up as better.
Yep. Self-efficacy resulting in outcomes. Couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
Okay. Because we talked about self-efficacy, we talked about self-advocacy, and I think you've gone through a really big journey yourself, having 2 kids, going into entrepreneurship, changing companies, and building something really, really solid and big. So the question for me would be, how has your ambition changed during this time? And also, what would you say to other women going through maybe some change in their own ambition and their own things of how they see their trajectory going?
Yeah, I have crazy amounts of ambition. I've only seen my ambition like compound day after day. I feel like it's just taken off, especially the farther away from postpartum I've gotten. I feel like, I'm finally out of the being sick every day. I feel like there was a year, maybe a little bit more than a year, where I was like sick every day from the daycare colds and being, freshly postpartum. And I'm finally out of that, sleeping all night. And so my ambition has just skyrocketed. And a lot of that, like I said, is that confidence from being a mom, where I'm like, there's nothing I can't do. And so it's a little bit of, I don't even want to call it cockiness, because I wouldn't say that about a man. It's just, I have so much ambition to change the world for working moms, and I have so much confidence, believe in myself. Like, I believe I can, if I shoot for the moon, if I try to hit a home run every single time, if I get close to it, I'm at least farther than if I set myself here, right? If I only try to go to here, I'm only ever going, and if I only get this far, it's not good enough. But if I try for here and I land here, that's way farther than here, right? So for me, I have so much confidence, so much ambition, and it's really exciting, because I don't know that I ever had this much ambition. I mean, I was always like, I'm going to build up my career. But like, now I'm like, what can't I do? Like, my goal is to write a New York Times bestselling book next year, or, have it be published, or start on it now. I met with a literary agent, start working on it now. Maybe it'll be published early 2028. I don't know. But like, I go big or go home, do big shit. But for many women, I mean, the seasons of ambition and motherhood are going to change and ebb and flow, right? So I think listening to the season that you're in, if you're going through a dip, be in that dip, it's okay. Don't push back against it, because you're going to just hit tension and try to force something that maybe isn't ready yet. And if you are in a season of ambition, what does that look like? What do you want to go after, and how do you make it happen? Because there's so much of the day, like you said, that, we plan and plan, we have backup plans for the backup plans. So if you approach growing your business that way of like, okay, how do I make that happen? How do I have backup plans to still hit that, or pivot where I need to still reach that? And I mean, evolution, when you're in the middle of an evolution and a huge transition, like early motherhood, it's going to feel kind of chaotic until you sort of reach a better like flow. And so go with the flow. Some days my creativity is low. Some days I have endless creativity, and I'm like, I get everything done that I wanted to get done and more. And then other days, like last week, I was just like feeling shitty and low and just like vegged on the couch for half the day. It's like, okay, it's okay. I don't need to force it today. So I think following your flow, your season you're in, that's important.
Couldn't agree more. I'm so there with you. I feel like I was always ambitious in a different way. I was in a very purpose-driven career and was very motivated by that. But I think through motherhood, I've become even more ambitious in many other ways. And, I think what you said about, leaning into how you are feeling is so important. I think at times I've gotten some judgment over, just enjoy this phase that, you do you, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, this is me. It's both and, as Constanze would say, right? I want to be present for my kids, but I have this drive to do XYZ, and I need to do it because I think it's important for me and for other women, right? And I think something else you said was, each day can look different, each micro season could look different. And I think, this is something Constanze and I joke about a lot, because 1 week or 2 weeks, I will be in full drive and I'll be kind of like leading our mini team. But there are other weeks where I am flat out and I'm like, here you go. And Constanze is like,
Yep.
it's me. I got this. Don't worry. And I think it's so helpful to have that. So really, really.
Ideally, when it's one day my good season and one day your good season. If both are in a good season, it's a bit difficult, but we have always managed. And I think it kind of pushed women to think differently. And I think sometimes we need this outside push, this kind of stimulation, this support system, and just the community around us to tell us what we're all doing and to show us the mirror. And when we're down, to just say, it's okay, just do it tomorrow. And I love that you're saying this, because you're building something incredible. And even you say you're sometimes lying on the couch for half a day because just the day you're having.
Yeah, I think you have to listen to that so that you don't overwork yourself, and that tension is going to eat up more if you try to push against it. But yeah, having that mirror helps so much, because the societal conditioning around motherhood runs deep. And yeah, we need to see the data about ourselves as much as we need companies to see it about us too.
Absolutely. And from our research, we saw that 70% of mothers, their ambition either stayed the same or actually increased after motherhood, right? And then when we did wave 2 with this crisis situation happening around us, a lot of people left, some people stayed. It was a mixed bag. But what we did see consistently was when infrastructure collapsed, whether it was, a supportive partner or childcare or schools, that is what actually resulted in ambition freezing. It didn't go away, but it actually froze. What are your thoughts on this kind of, impact of infrastructure on ambition freezing?
It sounds like, you're just defaulting to survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, everything else kind of shuts down and you get very focused on bare minimum survival. Are my kids fed today? Am I fed today? Do we have a place to sleep today? When you're in ultimate survival mode, your brain doesn't have the ability as much to be like, do I want to write a book next year? How am I going to grow my business next year? You literally can't. And so you need that infrastructure to provide the support so that all of those safety needs are met. And then you can say, okay, I don't have to be worried about my family and our safety today. So I have the brain capacity to think about my business. And so that's psychological safety, that's emotional safety, that's important. And that's why in times of crisis, I'm not surprised that ambition froze. You literally don't have any brain capacity to be thinking about that except survival mode. So the infrastructure is really what provides that support to do what you want to do. Meet those basic safety needs.
And again, to create this compassion and empathy, right? I talked to a friend this weekend and she said her job just went on as normal during the whole time. And I think as a mom, this is quite challenging. If you still have to go to the office, you don't have the flexibility to stay with your children. So I think having the data from our side, having the data from your side, seeing all of these things all of a sudden popping up will really help create a different storyline around this, and will hopefully put mothers into a different place in society, where we are seen as what we can bring to the table, and not only on how we bring it, but what we actually bring, because that's, I think, a huge difference in how we're doing things. Maybe just to slowly get there and slowly end the podcast, can you just tell us where we can find you? Like, where is the report? Where are your workshops? Where is the events? There are so many things. You're in your magazine. Like, how can we get it all?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reports and the event in September, the National Working Motherhood Week, that's at motheredmedia.com. And our magazine is at motheredmagazine.com. And you can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I started a Substack. That was very exciting. So we're on Substack.
We should collaborate.
Yeah, I would love to. Do you mind if I swear? It's called Like a Motherfucker. That's the Substack.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I think I saw something where you said my mother did not like the name of it.
It was so funny. Yes. So I picked that name because I'm very bold and in your face. And I sent it to her. I was like, I started a Substack. And she was like, but the name is like offensive, isn't it? Like, why are you swearing so much? She was not a fan. And then I did the second post, and then she was like, I sent it to her and she was like, okay, I get it now. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and I really love your, taking this deficit lens and challenges that mothers face to this conversation and shifting the dialogue around a strengths-based sort of conversation. You've spoken a lot about flexible work, which is something that came up as a top priority in our research with mothers in the UAE as well. There are so many overlaps and linkages, synergies between your work and ours. If you had to give mothers with ambition one tip that you have not shared, not on your TEDx, not on Forbes, something that you have felt maybe is too raw, or something you've held back on, but you feel like, this is something that is not talked about enough, what would that be?
The survival mode, feeling like you're just in the basic survival mode, trying to function and get through the day. Diamonds are forged under pressure. So if you're in survival mode, whatever that survival mode looks like, just know that you're building extraordinary capabilities. And once you get through that survival mode, you can start to put them into play and build that awareness of, oh shit, I did go through that. I did survive newborn sleep deprivation or whatever survival mode you're in. Whether it's, war or newborn trenches or whatever it is, you're forging incredible strength, like the deepest strength possible in that survival mode. And no one's going to label it that. Society's certainly not going to label it that. And so we need to label it that when you're going through that crisis mode, that's building you way more than you ever thought. So give yourself the patience and the grace to come out of that phase when it's safe and learn about yourself again.
That was so fantastically put for so many reasons. So yeah, the crisis, the newborn, it's so many things that are so relevant everywhere, but especially here in the UAE right now. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Alexa. It was lovely to have you. This is
Thank you for having me.
Signing off on Motherhood in Motion.
Motherhood in Motion,
the podcast for mothers with ambition.